they had these studios I could book out all through the school with all different kinds of consoles and tech. And it was like, okay, well, I'm just going to book out the studio and then sit there and learn how to use each console. And then you kind of get an understanding of signal flow and how a studio works. And that was crucial. I'm so grateful for that.
He's from Downey, California. He's a founding member of the band No Win. Please welcome Danny Nogueiras to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I found out about you from your debut album, Downey, named after the town you're from. What kind of went into that? Why did you kind of decide to name it Downey? Like, was that a plan from the start, or did that kind of take form after starting production of the album?
It was a plan from the start. A lot of stuff with No Win kind of starts the idea, the fully formed idea kind of comes first, and then songwriting and production helps to inform and fill out that world that I've kind of like thought up in my mind. So
yeah.
with Downey, the record, a lot of the songwriting had to deal with like nostalgia and kind of, I don't know, I wanted to make this like certain kind of indie rock record that I grew up loving when I lived there. And also a lot of that, the imagery and art from those records in that time was, kind of centered on like this mid-century Americana vibe. So sort of, almost suburban mid-century Americana, which Downey was very much when I grew up. Like it comes from that era. So it kind of all like informed like the art and the name informed the songwriting, but the songwriting also like went back and reinformed the art. It just kind of all worked as one as I made it.
Mm-hmm. And so like maybe it was in Downey. What was your first like experience with music like? Did you kind of grow up learning an instrument, anything like that? What kind of first got you into making music?
Yeah, I got my first guitar as like an early Christmas present when I was like in 7th grade. And I don't know, I knew that I was like obsessed and I really wanted a guitar. And I had already gotten into like, I had been listening to like Nirvana records and Blink-182 records, and I was already like a big rock, and I grew up listening to K-Rock here in LA. And I just always wanted a guitar, and then I played guitar all the time, started bands as soon as I had enough friends who played the instruments to have a band. So it was just kind of always there. And I feel like it was something I always wanted to do, and I always associated with it. Like I always associated it with getting out of Downey. Not that I didn't like it there, but it felt like I grew up in these like kind of smaller schools, and there was always like I couldn't even start a band until I got to high school because there just wasn't a drummer in my world. And it was like, so I always associate it with like there's a bigger world out there, the world of like rock and roll and bands going on tour. And I grew up going to shows, and I just knew it was like this big, beautiful world I wanted to join.
Yeah. So you kind of wanted like a band setting from the start, or was there ever a moment where you were kind of like a solo project, solo artist kind of vibe?
I mean, like No Win started as a solo project, but it needed the band to be done. Like there was always a cast of musicians that would be around and in it. And like even when I did make more solo focused music, like in high school when I was out of a band and I decided, okay, I'm just gonna go to my room with my 8-track, like it was always guitar based, and it was quieter and it was like acoustic, but it's always been in the realm of like instruments and things like that. And this new album we made is very different from that, but like it was always a band. Like I always saw a band, even if I thought of it as a solo thing. It was like, well, I need to find which drummer friend's going to play on this and which guitar. It always had to have musicians.
Yeah. And so, like, when you were growing up, was it kind of music from the start, or was there anything else you were thinking of doing? Any other possible career paths?
No, it's been music since I was a kid. Yeah, like I got into, I did like, I did some acting in high school. Like, I got into like anything creative. I was always really into art and acting, and I did like some comedy stuff, and anything that was like expressive and artistic, I always was drawn to. But as far as like career path or what I wanted to spend my life doing, it's never been anything but music focused.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And so, like, what kind of like tips or advice would you give to maybe someone just now starting a new band? They're like trying to get their name out there, something like that.
Yeah, as far as getting your name out there, I don't know. Play shows, just the same old advice. There's never any novel advice. As far as doing it, it's just keep doing it. Like I've been in so many bad bands, and I've made so many bad songs. You know, it's just like anything in life. I guess it's just you just do it and do it and do it because if you
Yeah.
love it, it's worth continuing to do. And every time you do it, you're going to learn something and grow and get better at it. But I mean, getting your name out there, that's like a permanent struggle, I think, until you reach some level. I assume
Yeah.
I'm not there. But yeah, it feels like some Sisyphus kind of like just keep pushing, just keep
Yeah.
going. Yeah, I mean, I've never thought of it as anything else.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
so, was there ever kind of a moment that you kind of decide, okay, like now I'm gonna start taking this music stuff seriously. I want to do this for a living. I want this to be my main source of income, or has it just kind of always been like that?
Well, it always wanted to be what I did. So I think more so than a moment that made me decide to do this, it was a series of moments of rejecting doing anything else. Like when all my friends, I tried out college for a bit and it didn't really work out for me. I didn't like it, and
Yeah.
I love learning, and I love having smarter people than me teach me things as often as possible in life, and finding people to mentor me. But I never jived in school, and then when other friends started looking for careers, like I felt like I had my career, whether or not it was thriving or working at the time. It never felt like a choice to do this
Yeah.
because I had been doing it my whole life, and it was always the center of my focus. It's like and then as a result, like obviously when I was 18 or 19, I'm not in a famous band, so I also produce and engineer. Like I'm talking to you from my studio right now, so it's like
Yeah.
I just kept making decisions of like, okay, well, if I'm not famous, which I never intended or counted on being, but if that's not happening, like, oh, what can you do in music to support staying in music?
Yeah.
And so let's work at studios and let's learn how to make records and produce records and engineer them. So it's more so a choice of like moments of saying like, yeah, no, I'm not going to go do something else. Just constantly
Yeah.
rejecting the idea that I can't or I shouldn't do this.
Yeah. And so for college, then did you end up dropping out of college early?
Yeah. I went to like a community college. I left early, which is a bummer because I do value. I mean, there's always going to be a part of it. It's like, man, I wish I could
Yeah.
get a college degree, but I don't regret anything. My life's worked out very
Yeah.
nicely. But um, yeah, I ended up studying a little bit of audio engineering for like a year at this kind of trade school, and then as soon as I could, I got a job at a studio, and that's more of like I would say that felt like my education, like my higher learning was like getting into studios with people who are very experienced and really talented, and just
Yeah.
getting to watch and ask questions, and that's where I learned a lot about what I do.
Yeah. And so when you kind of made that decision to drop out of college, what was like, did you have any sort of discussion with your parents? What did that look like? Were they
Yeah.
supportive of it? Did they want you to stay in
No.
school?
I mean, of course they wanted me to stay. My parents both immigrated here from Cuba, and my mom went back to school when I was a kid, and she went to UCLA and graduated with honors and went on to a great law school and became a lawyer. And I got to watch her do this. And it's something like I admire in her very much, and it always inspired me to want to get a college degree. So I wasn't necessarily excited about dropping out. I just sucked at school, and it wasn't working for me, and it wasn't making me happy or feel like I was achieving anything. And they wanted me to continue, but I don't think it was a conversation as much as I just told them I'm not going back. And it
Mhm.
was, it caused some problems, some trouble, but nothing. We're still all very close and love
Yeah.
each other and
Yeah.
support you. And they support what I do in life constantly now. Like they're a great supportive force. But yeah, no, it's a difficult decision.
Yeah.
But it was the right one for me at the time. So
And so how did that kind of help you, do you think, going to these, actually being in the studio, learning how to engineer, learning how to produce? How was that kind of different from learning in like a classroom sort of setting or like in a school setting?
Yeah, so getting to do both with engineering, I did go to a short bit of school for it. I graduated from a short program, and that was really helpful. The way I always like people always ask me like, "Do you think engineering school is necessary?" Like people who work with me at the studio, younger people, and I'm like, "No, I don't believe it to be necessary, but it can be cool." Like the school I went to, I always say what it provided for me that was important before I got to those studios is like a very basic. I had never been in front of a big recording console. I had
Yeah.
never. I had my 8-track and I had a little Pro Tools rig, and I understood. I taught myself how to record in this like home recording sense, but I had never worked at a proper studio. So school for engineering off in a classroom, they had these studios I could book out all through the school with all different kinds of consoles and tech. And it was like, okay, well, I'm just going to book out the studio and then sit there and learn how to use each console. And then you kind of get an understanding of signal flow and how a studio works. And that was crucial. I'm so grateful for that. But as far as the practice of making records and decision making in the studio, that was all in the studio. You can't learn that in the classroom because it's.
Yeah.
I really feel like in most art forms, it's really important to find people you look up to or who are making things that you think are great. And if you're lucky enough to be in a position where you have access to them making it and ask them how they do it and get advice and just kind of be a fly on the wall as much as possible and kind of like glean what you can from their great work. That worked so much better for me because I felt like I'm not just sitting in a classroom talking about or studying. I am actively learning while it's happening. Like the thing I want to know about is happening directly in front of me.
You kind of like everyone that makes something creative kind of learns their creative process along the way somehow, but it's hard to kind of teach a creative process or like teach how to, because there's no one way to do it. It's kind of different for everyone, and everyone has their own ways of doing it, own styles.
And just as much as seeing someone do something great that you're like, oh my god, I can't believe I witnessed that. And like I know how they're figuring out their tones, and I know how they're miking things, and I know how they're engaging with an artist while they record them. Those are great things to witness. But just the same, it's also important to witness friction, to encounter situations where you're like, well, I don't like the way that sounds, or I don't like the way they're talking to that person, or I don't like the way they're talking to me or the people around. Like just as much as witnessing greatness or things that you find to be great, it's important to witness things you don't like in a practical environment because then it forms you and you kind of get to like create this individual filter of like, here's what I picked up that I really love and here's what I want to be different from what I saw, and that ultimately helps you inform who you are.
Yeah, it kind of helps you get your own sound rather than sounding too much like this artist or another one.
Yeah, and I think in the studio, like one of the most important things, like school oftentimes can be telling you, this is how you do things. Here's how this works. This is how you do it. And going into a studio with professionals who have been doing it for decades, like, oh, that's instantly dumb. Like it's, nothing works anyway. There is no right way to do things. Like I like doing it this way. This guy only uses this mic in this way. This guy uses it everywhere. Like you want to be able to, you want to instantly throw out everything and just kind of go, nothing matters. If something makes the artist and you happy, it's awesome. So like studios just teach so much, and it also informs songwriting because I get to watch these people work on songs, and it's every aspect of it. It's like to me, a studio is a playground and a musical school. Like everything from making music to recording music to writing music, it's happening all around you at varying degrees of talent. Like incredible once in a lifetime, I've gotten to see things where I'm just like, I can't believe I got to witness that. And then there's times where you're like, this sucks, and here's why I think it sucks. Like it's just you're learning constantly.
Yeah, and so like there are kind of like a few things that are big for any recording artist or band is like being in the studio, like you said, kind of learning what a console does, knowing that whole setting. Another one of those is playing live, getting actual experiences playing in front of a crowd. What was your first live show like? Either just in general your first ever or your first as No Win?
So my first live show ever was at a rented like event ballroom. Some kids in my school were like, rented out a ballroom and were throwing a punk show. And I don't remember playing it because I probably blacked out from nerves. I was like 14 or 15. It was my first band and we were like playing original songs. So I was like, first time I'd ever done that. Terrifying. Probably sucked. And then the first No Win show, by then, I spent from 14 on, like I toured constantly when I was younger, as often as I could. I would like first tour when I was 17, and every time I had the money or the time, it's like get in a car or get in a van and go play basements and coffee shops. And I did that for all of my teen years and most of my like early 20s as well.
Mhm.
So the first No Win show, by the time I did that, that was in 2015. It was just like a side solo project thing where I was making demos and putting them on Bandcamp. Like it wasn't really a serious band. It was just something to film because my band that I was in before that had broken up and I just wanted to do something.
Yeah.
And I was at this like DIY punk space that's no longer around in LA called Pear Space, and I had my best friends playing in the band with me, and David, who still plays in No One, played that show with us. And yeah, it was great. And by that time, it's like playing the show just felt comfortable, and like it's fun to play new material. And it just, like by that time, it felt like routine, not in a bad way, but in like I felt comfortable doing it, and debuting like new songs felt awesome.
Yeah. And so being so young, like you said, 17, how did you kind of go about kind of the logistics of those tours? Did you have an artist like a manager label behind you, or
No,
were you doing it all? And if
no,
it,
I've actually never had a manager, and Danger Bird's the first label that I've been signed with No One's first record. That's like we did like 2 singles for them before the record, but that's the first
Mhm.
time I had a label. I've still never had a manager. The first one when I was 17, I was on all these like record trading forums, like message boards, and really into like the DIY punk thing, but I didn't know anything about it. I knew I wanted to be a part of it,
Yeah.
and there was this like empowerment of like, if you want to tour, just go tour. And so in like the stupidest way possible, because I didn't have any friends in that community really around, like me and my buddy who was in my band with me, we just like would go on Google and look up like live music venue and then a town, and then we find the kind that would probably let us play, which would usually be like some bar and grill or like, so not
Yeah.
cool, like just, will you let us play music there? And then we did it. We just went and we book a show over the phone from a Google listing, and then we just get in the car and drive to that place, then drive to the next place, and it was fun. And that was a tour to go up and record like our first album at this studio that I looked up to. That I was like, well, we're gonna go to Portland to make this record, so we should just book shows along the way to try and make extra money.
Yeah.
And then after that one, I got a little older, met people, and then the whole like DIY punk world like really provides when you start meeting people on message boards and stuff. And you're like, oh, I'm looking for a place in Akron, Ohio. Like, oh, that's a gap in my tour. And everyone will tell you, here's all the cool people I know in Akron. And
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time playing house shows and art galleries and, punk spaces.
Yeah. And so, like, is there that kind of just desire to work, to not like, rather than just go straight to Portland, wanting to try to get those shows and wanting to be playing, always be working? Was there any one that kind of instilled that in you, or did you kind of just learn that on your own?
I mean, it didn't feel like work at the time. I love doing that. I love playing shows. It's just cool to me, and I wanted to do it. But in retrospect, yeah, it's like weird for a 17-year-old to do it that way. I would have to think it's my parents, like I was so young, I didn't really have that big of a world at that time, and my parents are both like incredibly hardworking people. So
Yeah.
I think I grew up around like restlessly working people. Like even if things are going great, that's not an excuse to like, I don't know how to put it. It's like it doesn't feel like work. Like you kind of choose a vocation or a passion, and you just it's all I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And so,
Yeah.
like, now, especially like during and after the pandemic, so many artists and bands are getting discovered from social media platforms of all kinds, TikTok or otherwise. Like, what do you think this kind of does for the music industry? Help it, hurt it, anything like that? What do you think are some of the effects of that?
Oh no, I mean it's definitely it's like one of the biggest impacts to the music industry I've seen in my time working in it. It's wild. I can't say if it's on. Like the optimistic side of me says it's got to be good, right? Like I love like as much like I'm not great with it. I've tried to like be in and out on those platforms like TikTok and stuff, and it's fine. I can see the value in it. It's just I've never found my own voice in it yet. But it's I have to believe it's great because I do love hearing stories of like some artist in their room song going viral, and then they get to have this music career. That's beautiful. Like,
Yeah.
there wasn't tools really like that when I first started doing it, and I think it's awesome. I've also seen, some negative elements of it, and like, I don't, social media is just such a broad thing. I think it's a tool, right? And it's like, I think people who find a way to use it, that they're expressing themselves honestly, it's fun, and it's reaching more people with their art. That's one of the coolest things I could ever think of. It's rad, but I think it can be harmful, and I think, the industry's always going to find a way to like overly monetize or manipulate. There's always that to look out for, but I try to stay optimistic about it. I think it's really cool that young musicians have a place to find an audience and interact with them. That's awesome.
Are you a music artist trying to find a way to get your music on as many streaming platforms as possible? Then check out DistroKid. DistroKid is a super user-friendly and super easy-to-use service that will make your music available in stores like Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, Amazon Music, YouTube, Snapchat, everything you could imagine. It's available. People will even be able to add your songs into their Instagram stories. DistroKid helps you with the distribution, monetization, and promotion of all of your music. Use the link in the description of this video for 7% off any DistroKid package you want. Pick from musician packages designed to help artists get their own music out there, or even get a label package where you can manage up to 100 artists from one profile. So that's more for like managers, labels, and you can also get the musician package that I mentioned earlier, which is more for artists, producers, things like that. It's super easy, and you can get 7% off any package right now with the link in the description of this video. So once again, if you're looking for a way to get your music on as many streaming platforms as possible, I'm talking any platform you can think of, get DistroKid and get 7% off right now with the link in the description. Back to the program.
When you were 17, 19, however old, trying to play shows, do you think, trying to grow your career, do you think if you had something like this, you would try to use it to utilize and grow your... No?
100%, yeah, 100%,
oh, yeah?
yes. Because I was in high school when MySpace came out, and my band was on there instantly, and pure volume existed, and those any type of platform that they'd invent, our bands would be on.
Yeah.
And we'd be looking, but they just weren't that. I mean, MySpace had some big power in music for a long time. I booked a lot of touring shows through MySpace, for sure. I think especially young musicians, if you give them somewhere, hey, you can reach other people and other musicians with your music, boom, they're gonna be there. There's no reason not to. There's nothing to lose.
Especially when it's so accessible and free to anyone with internet access.
In that way, like I said, that's the optimistic side of me. It's incredible. Once you've been on it for a while, and you can see the negative mental effects of it. There's a deeper conversation. But as a tool, its existence is it's undeniably cool. I used every tool they gave me, and if I was in high school right now, I should be using them still, but adapting things gets harder as you get older, I guess. And the formats are so changed, and it's so much more labor intensive than it used to be. But yeah, it's awesome. It's a great tool.
Yeah, and so now, kind of along with that, just music, the creation of music, production of music is so much more accessible. It's so much more you go to an Apple store, their computers come with GarageBand pre-download, and you get a little MIDI keyboard for $30 on Amazon. How do you think that has helped the industry, having so much more volume of artists and bands out there, rather than the kind of limited amount that there were in the past?
Yeah, again, awesome. It's got to be a net positive, right? Making music creation more accessible and less reliant on. This is coming from a guy who's sitting in a recording studio I own and work at, but it's great. Putting the ability to create music and explore your creativity and have the empowerment to learn and do it yourself without thinking you have to go pay someone like me or some studio owner. That's awesome. I would love to believe that a place like a studio is somewhere you want to work because you're choosing to, because you either have a connection to what's been made there, or who's working there, and what the space can provide, that's rad. But I never want it to be a necessity to make music. I don't want to be like I think a long time ago it almost felt gatekeepy-ish. It's like, oh, we have to like spend all this. If we want our record to sound good, we have to spend all this money, and you don't know if the studio in town is run by a jerk or a really cool creative person.
Yeah.
So the idea that a kid can, save up, get a laptop, and like be off to the races, that's incredible.
And
I would like.
Yeah, to your point of it being like gatekeepers, I think
Yeah.
back in the past there was a big feeling of like you need a label to be successful because a label gets you vinyl records, it gets you radio play.
Yeah.
It was like the big thing there, and now we're seeing a ton of like independent artists, or like just being independent, being a lot more accepted, being praised at times even, and so I think that's awesome. And
it's good.
Yeah, and so when you're trying to come up with a new song or a new album, what does that kind of process look like? Do you try to at least kickstart it on your own, or do you, from the get-go, do you have people around you in the studio trying to give their feedback on how a song should go?
So traditionally with Noe, like on the early EPs and singles, the first album Downey, I would try and write as much of it as possible alone, and like it really wanted it to feel like a solo project. Mm-hmm. But then that's not to say like David Yurkovich, who's played on everything no one's done, and Jeff Enzler, who played drums, and Juan Lignan, who plays guitar, like they were still massively influential on what ended up happening. But I liked to come in as fully formed as possible. On this new album that's coming out, Dodger Stadium, it was a totally different process. Like me, Jeff, and David actually sat down, and like there is some songs that I would come in with done just because I wrote a song I really liked. Mm-hmm. But those other ones, it's like I kind of got this idea and I like it, but I don't know. And we'd go line for line and write sitting down together in this control room and change chords, and like there was a lot more co-writing and a lot of collaborative writing on this record.
Yeah, and so we kind of mentioned it earlier, being in the studio, you hear something that maybe you don't fully agree with, and you tweak it a bit to kind of get closer to your own original sound.
Mm-hmm.
How do you kind of balance inspiration and imitation? How do you like learn from other artists, take bits and pieces, but not sound too much like them?
It's not really a conscious thing. Me and David have talked about this a lot, where David's a bit older than me, and he was, I learned a lot from him making music with him in the studio when I was younger. And he taught me a lesson a long time ago. I was like really self-conscious about not having my own sound, or I didn't feel like I was ripping anyone off, but I didn't feel like I had established any sort of identity really. And he kind of just told me like, you can't, like you do it. It's a natural thing. You just be honest, and it's natural, and you can't not sound like you. You just can't. Yeah. And I think if you're honest with yourself and your collaborators in the studio and in your band, if something's ripping something off, we'll be like, I can't do that. Like that's like someone will catch you, if you don't catch yourself, or you catch yourself. But beyond that, I think you just like stay honest, and if something's cool to you, you do it. And if it sounds good and right for the song, you do it. And naturally your identity will come through, because I mean, I don't know if I have the ability to become someone else, or to like, it's just, you just have to just do it and be honest. It's going to come out like you.
Yeah. And so like when releasing music, No Win or otherwise, was there ever a song specifically or an album that you kind of put out and like you kind of had a preconception of how you think it might perform, and it either performed like way better than you thought it would, or like didn't get all the traction that you thought it would?
There's a single that we put out in between. It was like after Downey, but before we started doing all these new singles. This was like pre-pandemic, called Blood on Your Tooth, that I really liked when we made it, but it didn't really fit on the first record. I was stoked we were putting it out as like a little single on its own, just in between, between new stuff. And I thought it would do fine. Like I was like, it's a cool song. I don't know who's gonna like dig it, and it's now like our highest streaming song if you take all platforms into account. Like on Spotify, it doesn't do that well, but on Apple, it's like massively better than all our other. I still don't understand. I think the algorithms at work or something. Yeah. But yeah, that one did really well. And as far as not getting enough traction, I mean, like the discography. Like, I want it all to get as much traction as possible. So, like, I mean, I'm grateful that it's being listened to all the time. Like, I can't believe that anyone's listening to this stuff when I make it. It's always a gift. But like, yeah, I'm always gonna feel like I want it to have more traction because I like, you know, you make something you're proud of it. You
want
want
something
to
get as much exposure as it can. You want you inherently want to keep growing your career.
Yeah, totally.
And so, like, as No Win, as this band that has now kind of found their own sound, if you will, like, is there any artist that, like, if you got a dream collaboration you would want to bring into the studio to, like, make a song with No One or a band to collaborate?
I don't know. Like, I don't know. On this last record, I would have said like Mario C, who did like all the Beastie Boys stuff. Like that was like so weighing heavy on our head, like his production for Beastie Boys when we were making Dodger Stadium. And like I would have loved someone like that. But in the future, I don't know yet because I feel like the dream collaborator would always be informed by what I'm making. Like, you know, there's not like one universal person. It's more like, oh, for this thing that we wrote or this record that we're making, you know who would be awesome? And I don't know what's next, so we'll see. But like, I mean, it's also interesting because we've never worked with a producer. We've never worked with outside engineers. It's always been me and David making the stuff in our studio. So I don't know. In general, I'm excited to collaborate. Like, if and when we do another record, I would really love to try that approach rather than how we've done it forever, just to see, just to try something out.
Yeah. And so, kind of before No Win, you've had previous band experience, obviously. Like, how does it kind of feel for you, the like slight differences from band to band, and like difference in dynamics, difference in sound, anything like that?
Yeah, I feel like I learned a lot about. I've had like good band experiences. I've had bad band experiences, but as long as we're making music that we all like, it's always been musically fulfilling. I think most of all, I learned a lot about like communication and how you approach the situation of working with people. Like I wasn't great at it. People I worked with weren't great at it, and that usually led to a lot more discontent than anything musical. Like I don't know that I've ever been in a project or played with people that I found musically non-fulfilling because I probably would have just been like, yeah, I gotta go. Like it's just not like it wouldn't have been a hard decision to dip, you know. But I've definitely this band feels like it still functions like the machine of it still functions kind of like a solo project where if there's something I want to do with No One, I'm going to do it, and then I'll put the word out to like the A squad of the people who play with me the most. Like, you guys want to go on this tour? You guys want to play this show? And if I really want to play it and one of them can't, it's very well accepted. Like, oh, someone will fill in. Like, it's no big deal. So in that way, it functions. So which has helped me because I'm pretty like fever brained. Like if I want to do something, I want to do it, and that could lead to a lot of conflict if you need everyone on board for everything. So that's been really helpful. And I also just feel happy. Like the music that we're making feels extremely fulfilling. It's very exploratory, and the long-term collaborators that I've had are like really down for the process of. I don't know. Like it doesn't matter if it sounds nothing like what we did yesterday or last week. Like it's just for the fun of crafting it and performing it. And there's not really this like take yourself seriously aesthetic on the line of like, well, that doesn't fit what we're projecting. Like that's out the window, which I'm so happy about. That I think is like crippling. So that's probably the freshest thing in knowing is just having a peace of mind of knowing like nothing matters. Like there is no rules. Like nothing matters. Just make what you want to make.
Yeah. And so you like in a situation you kind of mentioned, if you're performing live and let's say this person can't make it, so you get a filler. Do you still just kind of say like, all right, let's play anyways and just go out there and play, or do you feel like it's sort of different playing without like that person?
Oh, it's always different, but I will still go out and play. But I'm very blessed with like a community in LA and friends and like old collaborators that like there's always people I would love to play with. So even if like I said, there is definitely like a No Win A squad, and not that they're better musicians than everybody else I know. It's that like we are what I consider to be like that's how I want No One to be all the time. But in lieu of that, if David can't make it, or if Juan can't make it, and Jeff like is living in Berlin right now. There's always another drummer who I love, and it's different than playing with Jeff. There's a different guitarist than Juan, but I love playing with Juan. You know, it's almost fun and interesting to hear how the band can manifest with these different personalities and like voices in it. You know, and the parts are fairly written, so you do get the same thing, but there's a change in the way people do it. And so it's fun. I mean, there definitely is the way I would like it to be all the time, but I don't want that to be this like written in stone. We can't do anything if everyone's not there, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And so from, I don't know how far back they go, but I just looking at you, I see dyed hair, tattoos on the arm. When was your first tattoo? What was that experience like? What did that mean to you? Finally getting a tattoo.
Yeah, I got my first tattoo when I was 18. And I just felt like I had to. Like I knew I always wanted tattoos when I was a kid. I thought they were cool, and it was like instantly go get a tattoo. And then I got more just I don't know whenever I could. I guess I don't have that many compared to most people I know. You know, like so I just got them when I wanted to get them. It didn't really mean much. I just always thought they were cool, and it's like a fun thing to do. And the dyed hair is recent. Like I've just been like. When we were doing this, like the photos for this album, I wanted to like have this like crazy dyed hair. And then once it was short and dyed, I realized how easy it is to just like or it'd grow out. And I'd be like, shave it, bleach it, and I have like a closet full of different colors now. And I'm just like, it's just another dumb fun thing to do. That is, you know,
yeah. Well, so is there any tattoo that you've kind of gotten with meaning behind it, or are they all just kind of cool designs?
They all have something behind them, but it's like, you know, no one wants to hear about what my tattoos are about. Like it's like they all have a story. They all have something. There's funny stories, but like none worth talking about.
Nothing too significant. Nothing like life altering.
No.
Yeah.
No, I don't know that a tattoo will ever be life alteringly meaningful. I bet you there are some that I thought were when I got them. When I look at them now, I'm like, that was a good day. Like it's you know.
Yeah. And so, like, now that you have all this live experience for most of your life, like, is there any one show that kind of sticks in your mind or that you just really had a good time at, or, like, just a favorite live show you've played?
Yeah, I'm sure, like, we did a tour with Swerve Driver and Failure. That was, like, a kind of difficult tour in different ways, but there was a show it was at a place called the Oriental Theater. I don't remember what city it was in. I think it's in Colorado. Pretty sure. It was great. Might have been I don't know what state we were in. But like there was a lot of shows on that tour. But that show was like I can like play the view from stage in my mind. Like it just felt really good. And we were first of 3 on that tour, and a lot of the venues we played, like the house wasn't full yet or whatever. But for whatever reason, that was slammed when we played. Everyone was super enthusiastic. It was amazing. That was really fun. We played with our friends Fiddlar at the Regent Theater for like a Halloween show years and years ago. Like I think before, I don't even think the first record was out yet. And that was rad, one, because it's like getting to play with your buddies is always fun.
Yeah.
And 2, like their fan base is nuts. Like, we were first of 3 on that show, and at a Fiddlar show, it's like 1,000 cap room or something, but there's a line down 2 blocks 2 hours before doors, Yeah. So like getting to play for kids that are just like waiting to get into this Fiddlar show, and they were super receptive, and like I guarantee you 90% of them had heard us because we had no record out. I don't believe. It's like maybe we did. I don't know, but like they were super receptive, and it was fun, and those kids go off. Like it's just like it was a fun show.
Yeah, and so maybe it was like. While you were opening and it was another person's fan or your own or fans of your own, have you had any kind of like wild fan interactions? Have you ever had anything like that?
No. Like, I mean, like to be like honest and like humble, like I don't think we have that many fans yet, and like the fans we have, like because we're still in like an opening band and we're still like, we're new. Like our first record came out in 2019 in March, and then a year later we fell off the face of the earth because everybody did, and now we're putting out our second record, which feels like a second first record because it's like start the whole thing back up. So I just don't think we have that many like deep fans, and the fans that we do have, who I appreciate very much, they don't see us as like this thing. We like, they'll just walk, like we're working the merch booth after the show every night. Like we've gotten to meet a bunch of cool people who I guess would consider themselves fans, but they're just like people we might get a beer with after the show.
Yeah, it's still very interactive, very personal. You still get to meet most of your fans rather than like some of these giant artists that like play an arena show and the fans are like great and then just like walk out and leave without like anything like that.
Yeah, no, I'm like doing merch after a set and I'm standing at the bar watching the other bands, and then like, and when we headline, when we headline in town and we do like club shows, I'm in the audience or at the bar drinking beer and watching the bands we were playing with because I like them. So it's still like I feel like we're just like people who play music, in our city. We're not really like these. I've never felt that like fan musician.
You don't kind of you don't, in your mind, you're not like at a celebrity status or like popular status.
Yeah, no, in no way. Like I'm grateful for everyone who listens to music, and it does get played more than I've been played in other bands. But yeah, no, I still just feel like the same as I've always felt. Like it's cool to be at a show and hang out with people. And if someone says I liked your stuff and they buy your record, that's rad. But they're just like, oh, thanks. Like they're just people.
And you're like, it seems like this is kind of the perfect situation for you. But is there any higher level that you want to reach with music, or I guess what do you want to take from music? What level do you want to reach? Are you just happy with it being like, hey, this is what I do, this is like my main source of income, or do you want to get like these consistent headline tours, like playing with big crowds?
I want to be content with where I'm at, which I feel like I am, but at the same time, of course, like I want to play the Palladium, I want to like sell out the Fonda on my own. Like I definitely want to play big shows. They're really fun, and the bigger the crowd gets, it's a different feeling. I mean, I love small. It's a different dynamic. Like a small show is intimate. You're really connected with the people you're playing with, but a big show is this other thing, and like we've gotten to do them a few times, and it's incredible. Like I would love to experience as much of being a musician as I can, and I put a lot of years into experiencing like basements and art galleries, and now I've put a lot of years into experiencing clubs and whatever. And I would love to have the gift of years to experience what it's like to tour in a bus and play big shows all the time. I don't think it's a necessity to be happy about my career or my music at all, but who doesn't want to see these varied experiences in their craft? I would love to get a feeling of what it's like to be anywhere in music.
Yeah, and as you were talking about that, you were mentioning the Palladium or these other venues. Do you have sort of a bucket list or like a dream venue that you would want to play?
Yeah, like I'd love to play the Palladium. I don't really have there's not like a dream one. There's a million across the country that I'd be like, oh, this place, that having toured and seen a bunch. Like there's places I've gotten to play already that I didn't think I would get to, and so it's not really like a dream list. It's more just like there's a long list of places I'd love to play. Yeah.
And so whether it's like a personal connection with just how it sounds, or maybe you took a lot of time writing it, is there a song you've released that like is your favorite or that you have a special connection to?
This sounds like a cop-out answer, but it really is true. Surfing, the last single we put out, I mean, it's always going to be something new with a musician, right? Because it's like, I'm always most excited about
because
what we just
it's
did.
new.
But specifically surfing, like in the context of the new record, it was on an EP and it came out as a single, but it's going to be on the record that comes out next month. And specifically that on this record was, as like the whole creation process, it was my favorite song on the record. Like I felt like it explored the production style we were trying to go for really well. David did so many cool things with the production. I did things I'm really proud of with the production, and the writing is fun, and it doesn't overthink itself, which was like a big goal of a lot of the writing on this record. It's like, let's not try and get too heady with it. Like almost the opposite. Like let's force ourselves to be less heady than we try to be usually. And like I feel like that song really achieved this. Like it's the vibe I wanted, and it came out just right for me.
And the video for that is out already, right? For people to go watch.
Yeah, Yeah, the video directed by Ryan Baxley, who's like constant video collaborator with us, genius guy. Yeah, he directed it, and that's out. It's on YouTube. It's surfing.
All right. Well, those are all the questions I had for you today. Thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you online? The band.
You can find us on most social media platforms by typing like NoWinLA, NoWin.LA, anything like that. We're there. It's like there's a TikTok, there's an Instagram, there's a Twitter. We have a website, NoWin.LA. You can listen to us at every streaming platform in existence, I believe, and you can purchase our records at dangerbirdrecords.com.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again for coming on. It's been a great time, and good luck with any upcoming music projects you have.
Cool. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.